So nowadays, it's fair to say that some of the best COD zombie maps ever made are not actually from TREYARCH. And no, I'm not talking about Sledgehammer or Infinity Ward's rendition of the mode, but I'm actually talking about the community of players that are developing zombie maps themselves over on PC. My name is Kunjora, and in this video, we're going to be talking about how the custom zombies community are beating TREYARCH at their own game. Now, community developed maps for COD zombies has been an ongoing thing for over 10 years now, as the tools to develop them first became available way back in World at War. Since then, it's been non-stop innovation and groundbreaking ideas, so much so that some of these creations have inspired features found in subsequent official TREYARCH material. Now, before we dive into the thick of things, it's worth mentioning that the purpose of this video is not to trash TREYARCH and their efforts, but rather to examine, break down, and criticize the business model enforced onto them that has subsequently resulted in a negative shift in development, all while praising the efforts made by the awesome community of custom content creators. Now, since Cold War Zombies released, we've received 3 official Zombies maps, 4 if you want to count Outbreak. We've had D Machine, Firebase Z, and Mauder Toten. These maps admittedly are pretty damn good. But if you just turn your head and look into the world of custom zombies, however, since October 2020, we've had Nightmare, Kowloon, Tu Vong, Atlahua, Daybreak, Operation Harborage, Plague of Evil, Doris Declassified, Gulag Zombies, Interment, Dead High, Harakiri, Mount Seal, Escape, Project Elemental, and there's so much more, especially if we go back before October. But the ones that I listed are the ones that I can think of that have innovated, and the ones that in some occasions I found myself enjoying and playing more times than I have with the Cold War maps that have released around the same time. Now granted, you could say for a fair few of these maps that visually they're just not up there with the recently released TREYARCH ones, but to that I have a few responses. 1. These maps are largely created by a small handful of 1 to 3 people instead of an entire series of large-scale dev teams. 2. These maps are being developed for a game that released way back in 2015 and they're still looking this good. And 3. There are certain limitations with the tools and the game's engine that restrict some of these creators from elevating the maps even further. There is truly a sea of talent within this community, and maps like Leviathan, Europa, Nightmare, Herrenhaus, and Atonement are testaments as to how this community are capable of toppling TREYARCH at their own game. But how exactly has this come to be? Well, the reality in my opinion is dead simple. TREYARCH Zombies in its heyday generated a huge amount of fans. It was clear that the developers at TREYARCH had a passion and a drive to make this mode something that stood out in the industry, and that's exactly what they achieved. The success of TREYARCH Zombies resulted in a mass amount of duplicates and references in other video game franchises, and also formed a large and extremely dedicated fan base. A fan base so in love with the mode and full of passion for it that some of whom leaped at the opportunity to learn and create zombie maps themselves using the tools that TREYARCH so kindly released to the public. What resulted was people using their ideas to fill in gaps in the storyline, to bring forward maps that were teased officially many years ago, and to create entirely new styles of gameplay that all coupled together provide the most diverse and exciting hub of COD Zombies content. Meanwhile, TREYARCH themselves have since always been under pressure by their publishers to make content against the clock as quickly as possible. Back at the birthplace of COD Zombies in the days of World at War, the mode was simply a fun afterthought that was produced in leftover development time. As a result, the experiences we got absolutely pushed in the interest of innovation, but the maps themselves were heavily based on existing maps found in multiplayer and from the game's campaign, which makes a lot of sense considering that the Zombies mode again was not in development whatsoever until near the end of the game's production. They would have simply never had the time to build maps in entirely new locales. With Black Ops 1 following in 2010, however, that all changed, as zombie development was in full swing from day one, and almost every map that we received was completely and utterly new from top to bottom as a result. The same principles went on into Black Ops 2 and Black Ops 3, and these games together go recognized as the golden era of the COD Zombies mode. When Black Ops 4 rolled around, development was quite shaky to say the least, but nonetheless we were given a fair amount of brand new maps alongside multiple remakes that, whilst you could argue do not carry the level of replayability that we hoped for, they do look great and we were very generously catered for in terms of the volume of maps available to us. But then came a generational leap forward, and with it, Black Ops Cold War. At this point, Treyarch as a studio are likely completely and utterly burnt out from the strenuous time constraints forced onto them by Activision, which of course explained why the launch of Black Ops 4 just before it was plagued with more blue screens than a 14-year-old's computer. Cold War may not have many maps, but there are a few things that can be said to explain why this is in defense of Treyarch. First off, Cold War has far more detail in all of its assets and visual elements. The studio are faced with the same amount of dev time as before, but are expected to produce far higher quality material. The time frame that they're given just simply fails to reflect the fact that AAA games take longer to develop nowadays than they did last generation, and so on. The second point is that if the rumors are to be believed, Treyarch are being forced to spread themselves thin by having to also co-develop zombies for the upcoming Sledgehammer title, World War II Vanguard, which I can't imagine makes their lives any easier. But thirdly, being worked against these time constraints for so long at this point has likely taken such a toll on the dev team behind zombies that to them, the mode itself has gone from an innovative passion project to a chore, a tick box of sorts. Now of course I don't work there and I can't speak on behalf of them, but this is just kind of the vibe I get when playing their new material. This is reflected by the fact that all of the maps and modes that we've seen in Cold War so far are built upon existing elements that we've seen either from the past or from the game's campaign and multiplayer, just like with World at War. I mean, they do still overhaul and expand these maps, however, so comparing to World at War may not quite be fair. Instead, it should kind of be compared to the Ether maps we got in Black Ops 4, but nonetheless, with only 3 round-based maps to its name at the time of making this video, and with the predictable announcement that Season 5 of Cold War will not feature an additional round-based map, it's clear that Cold War is the point where one way or another, development for zombies has gone a little sour behind the scenes. The frustrations caused by publisher-driven time constraints has even driven talent away from the studio itself, with Jason Blundell and his team subtly alluding to this when announcing his new game studio, Deviation Games. But getting back to the point of this video, the state of the official development of zombies being where it is has allowed custom zombies to deservingly shine through again, just like it did back in World at War, and the real reason as to why this is dials back to what we just touched on. The small talented group who are making these custom maps still hold that passion that was reflected in Treyarch's earlier material. The COD Zombies mode itself had such an impact on players that some of them decided to learn multiple key elements of game development just to contribute their ideas to what they're so passionate about. In addition to this, they're also working under no time constraints whatsoever, meaning they can take as long as they need to create their visions. Not only that, but innovative features and entirely new ways of looking at the game's formula are brought forth by this community because they simply just have the time to convert their passion into new ideas. I'll say it again, they have the time to convert their passion into new ideas. I mean, does that sound familiar? Because that is the birth of the COD Zombie mode itself. It was made by a few members of Treyarch's dev team back in 2008 that took the time to mold their spontaneous idea into reality. And sadly, it seems that nowadays, at least from my impressions, Treyarch might never be able to find the time to realize any of the fun ideas that might be floating around the studio as we speak. Now, I know that if you're a fan of Outbreak, you might argue that there is already exactly the kind of idea I'm talking about, but love it or hate it, Outbreak is undeniably bare bones in how it's executed, and with more time, Outbreak could have been so much more than what it is now. I mean, just imagine if every developer working on COD Zombies right now just decided to make a custom map with no time constraints and no interference from the higher ups. What we would get would genuinely be probably the best thing we've ever had for the mode. It is my belief that that is why Blundell's Deviation Game Studio now exists, so that these ideas are nourished instead of being left to die. I mean, honestly, the next best thing to Call of Duty Zombies might already be in someone's head right now in Treyarch Studios, but they're restricted from being able to let another great idea thrive into reality. And so all we can do is hope for the unlikely scenario in which either Deviation Games make makes a COD Zombies alternative, or the even more unlikely scenario that Activision might fix all of their up internal issues, as well as give TREYARCH some space to shine and innovate once again. We all know that the team at TREYARCH are tremendously talented, and they've proved that time and time again. Until that day, however, custom zombies, in my opinion, will continue to lead the charge, and thankfully, it will soon be more accessible to people thanks to Valve's upcoming Steam Deck, and I've actually already made a pretty large video talking about that in depth on my channel, and I'll link it on the top right corner of the screen now as well. But that just about wraps up my thoughts on this topic, lads, ladies and gentlemen. I do hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and don't hesitate to comment down below what your thoughts and opinions are on this topic. But thanks again for watching, guys, and I hope to catch you very soon. Cheers.